Hi, my name's Kip Winger, and I'm here with a huge hero of mine, the one and only Alan Parsons. And Alan's been nominated for 13 Grammys, and he just won a Grammy, so congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
And honored by the Queen with an OBE recently, which is extraordinarily cool. I have been a big fan of his so long that I wrote him a letter with my demo tape on it when I was 16, and he actually wrote me back, and here is the letter.
Is that actually my writing on there?
No, that's mine. I gave you a self-addressed stamped envelope.
Oh, gotcha.
But you sent me this card with a little critique of my band.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's my writing, yeah.
Yeah. And it was at the height of his career, so I mean, it's a testament to what a great individual you are, and I appreciate that. And then later, I was at the LAX airport. I got a call, and I heard on the other end, "Hello, Kip, this is Alan Parsons." And I was like, what? Inviting me to sing with his band, which was a great honor for me. So I got to sing with the Alan Parsons Live Project for, I don't know, a year or two, and that was extraordinary. So I just wanted to talk to you about from the artist point of view, not so much the commerce part of the business. I know you answered an ad at Abbey Road when you were 18 and got the assistant engineer gig at Abbey Road, and you instantly were working on huge acts like the Beatles.
It was extraordinary how quickly everything happened. I wrote to the manager at Abbey Road and said that I'm working for EMI, which is the parent company of Abbey Road at the time. And they granted me an interview, and 2 weeks later I was on the payroll at Abbey Road. It was extraordinary.
Unreal.
Quick sequence of events.
So were you a musician before that?
I was playing in a blues band.
You were?
Right before I got the interview, and it became clear probably after about a week that I said, I think I'm going to give this studio engineer gig a try. And sorry guys, I'm leaving the band. I can't.
And you were playing keyboards and guitar?
Guitar. I was another Clapton wannabe, just playing blues in a blues band, which was all the rage back in 1968. That was arguably the peak of the blues band era. We put an album out quite recently of that period.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, so it was interesting to hear it again. I was okay as a blues guitarist, but I think I became better at being a studio guy than a musician guy.
What was the aha moment where you were like, I'm going to do this as an artist?
That aha moment didn't actually happen. It just happened gradually when Eric Wolfson, who became the other half of the Alan Parsons project, approached me, first of all, as a potential manager. Then he said, you could make your own concept album and make it as big as Dark Side of the Moon if you wanted to.
Wow, that's...
And I continued what I'd been doing successfully as a producer and engineer, but I didn't know at the time that I was going to have my name on it. It was just an idea to make an album based on the work of Edgar Allan Poe, and nothing really was different. I had a hand in the composing, but that was the main change. I didn't feel like the artist per se, and it was only when Ross Regan, who was the boss of the label that we signed with, 20th Century Records, he decided that because everybody had been referring to the record as the Alan Parsons Project, how's the Alan Parsons Project going? Oh, it's going really well.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
And then he said, let's make that the name of the act. So it was his doing.
Wow.
And so that's why it didn't happen overnight. I just was, and it was no decision of mine. It was a sort of commercial decision by the label that I would be mentioned as the artist, the Alan Parsons Project.
So when you were engineering all these albums, were you actually also having song ideas and writing songs at the time? Or when you really started the Alan Parsons Project, did you sit down and go, okay, we have to write some songs?
Yes, we did. And I did a certain amount on my own without Eric. Notably a song called To One in Paradise on the first album. That was pretty much my doing, but I didn't write any of the words. So Eric was always the lyricist.
I know you've written tons of songs, and you're still writing to this day. So when you feel the inspiration hit you, or the urge to write, or just the need to write, where do you draw your inspiration? Like, what's your process?
To be brutally honest, often it's a deadline.
Yeah, well, I mean,
you say, I've got to write some songs because I've got to deliver an album by whatever date, December 31st, whatever it is. But I don't often sit down and say I'm going to write something right now. It'll usually just be in a moment of quietness, or a moment of just sitting at the piano or picking up a guitar, just noodling.
Right.
And then an idea will come through.
Yeah, I mean, I often maintain that for me, when I write music, the best ideas are always by accident.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely, I agree with that. And there was an extreme case in point on iRobot, the title track. I wrote this sequence that could be interpreted as having the first beat of the bar in one place as well as another place. So what happened, if you know the tune, it goes...
Of course.
But if you put the first beat of the bar in a different place, it becomes...
That used to mess with my head every night we were on stage.
Yeah,
totally.
But that was a kind of accident. And I remember Stuart Tosh, the drummer, having a really hard time trying to catch the beat,
Right.
when we were tracking it. But accidents, happy accidents are rife in my world, I think, as well as a lot of others.
Right, and when I was thinking of speaking to you, I thought, well, when you write a tune and collaborate on a song, and the song starts to develop, do you conceptualize the production in tandem with it? Or are you kind of just following the chords, and do you kind of just chisel away?
I'm not one of these producers that can, visualize the finished product
right
immediately upon the song being presented. I love to experiment. I love to try different ideas, try different keys, try different tempos, try shifting verses and choruses around and so on. I enjoy that process. I enjoy the process of structuring a song.
Me too.
Eventually you have to commit to it and say, well, it's going to be this tempo, that's going to be, the first verse is going to be there, the second verse is going to be there, the first chorus is there.
That's an interesting point, because I was going to ask you, how do you know when something's finished?
Somebody said any song or poem or project is not so much ever finished, it's abandoned.
Oh, my God, that's amazing.
I think that's what happens. You can always continue, make microscopic improvements and adjustments, but in the end you just have to say, I think it's there now.
I have that too. One record I did in particular, I look back and I wish I could. There's so many things that I wish I could go back and change on it.
Then do it. Go back to it and do it, and put it out as a bonus track on another album or something.
I should probably do it, because a few of those things just have been bugging me for 30 years.
That's what I did with our first album. First album, Tales of Mystery and Imagination, came out in '76, and we revisited it in 1987 and remixed it, added some stuff, got rid of some timing issues, and it was a better album.
That's a great idea. I'll take your advice on that. What do you think the biggest misconception of Alan Parsons is?
The biggest misconception is people think that I sing everything, and I didn't even start really singing lead vocals per se until the American band was formed in about 2000, 2001. To this day, I get fan mail saying, "Oh, you're a great singer."
I think you are a great singer.
Well,
but that's true. Listen, when we played live, I mean, you only sang a couple songs, right? Mm-hmm. I knew that when I was a kid, because I used to listen to your music intently, and I knew that you had a lot of guest singers and all of that.
Yeah, that was our trademark, really, having guest singers, never having the same vocal texture on 2 consecutive tracks. And that was a nice license that I had to do that.
That was a nice license that you had, and you didn't really do any live performing for quite a while you were still having huge hits, right?
It was always assumed that the Alan Parsons project was a studio outfit. We never even
amazing.
thought about playing live, as long as Eric and I were together. Then Eric and I had a legal issue, which was no fault of mine, not really any fault of his either, but it meant that we could not actually record together. That's when I decided that I would make an album with some of the musicians I'd worked with in the past. And it just became an Alan Parsons album as opposed to an Alan Parsons project album. And that was in '94. In order to give that album as much of a chance as possible to have commercial success, we decided to put a band on the road and play it live. Along with all the previous hits of the APP. They would have asked for their money back if we didn't play
Yeah, of course.
Eye in the Sky and Games People Play and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So that was always part of the equation as well, but we were trying to promote that album. It was called Try Anything Once.
Are there any particular markers in your career or songs that you were like, oh, that was really good? That was like my favorite one that made you really grow? Like, can you remember any one moment on any one song where you had an epiphany and you were growing as an artist, of your skill level and your inspiration, and it just became, more defined?
The first album kind of put us on the map. A lot of people said that this is not just prog rock. This is a style of music that hasn't really been heard before, which was great. And we did okay with it. And then Clive Davis came along and said, "I want to sign you for a 3-album deal." The success grew from that. We had, iRobot was a pretty big success. We had a huge amount of success with the 3rd album, Pyramid. And then, of course, came Eve and Eye in the Sky. Everything just went upwards. It was great, and we did better with every album we were doing.
When you kept getting better, did you feel more pressure to be better? Because I remember when I had my first hits, and they were nowhere near as big as your hits, but it was always like the record company going, okay, we need some more of those, that kind of a pressure, especially back then.
Clive did pressure us to be commercial. That song, he says, that song has a shot, but not the way you've done it. He would make these edits that you would not believe them if you. He would actually go into a studio and cut the tape up.
Wow.
With an engineer. Or something. We got the idea of what he was trying to achieve, and sometimes we would go with it. More often than not, say, "Sorry, Clive, we can't. That doesn't work. That doesn't work musically." But he was always supportive. He was always ready to choose the key song from each album, and he was always right. He's incredible in that way. Give him 100 songs and he'll say, well, these 5 are going to be hits, these 95 are not going to be hits.
His legacy is incredible.
Yeah.
If you had to pick your top 3 most influential musicians on what you do,
I would say that perhaps I was more influenced by producers than artists.
That's very interesting.
I thought George Martin was incredible because he could produce any style of artist. When he did the Beatles, he did comedy records. He wrote scores for his own orchestral records and stuff. He was a multi-talented guy, and I consider him to be a huge influence. And of course, I had the wonderful privilege of working with him.
Yeah, that must have been incredible.
Phil Spector, there's another producer that just saying, more this, more that, we need more echo on this. Let's put another guitar on, let's put another bass on. He had a sound, and he really did have a sound.
He did.
And that was extraordinary.
That's interesting. So you relate more to producers than...
Well, okay, having said that, I'm a huge Beatle fan.
Yeah, of course.
I'm a huge Beach Boys fan. All the music that was happening at the time that I joined Abbey Road in the late 60s.
It's funny because you've written so many great songs, co-written or written, and because when I listen to your productions, I hear your voice all over them. So it's a very interesting idea that being an artist, your voice can carry through as a producer just every bit or more as a songwriter.
It's a funny thing that people hear music that I've made, whether it be as a producer or as half of the Alan Parsons project, and they say, I have a sound. I don't hear that sound. I just don't see why people say, Oh, that's unmistakably Alan Parsons. And I don't go for that. I just think it just happens.
I can relate to that myself. People say that when they listen to my music, and they say I have a sound, and I don't get that.
Maybe it's a positive. Maybe that's a good thing. That we don't go into the studio saying, I need to make sure that this sounds in my style. I never think of it in those terms.
That's what I was going to ask you, actually. When you're in the studio producing, and do you have a bag of tricks that you always go to, or are you always kind of searching for a new way to express a certain idea? I mean, obviously we all have our certain tricks that we fall back on.
Nearly everything I've done has featured acoustic rhythm in some form or other. Usually double tracked, sometimes triple tracked. So I think that's possibly one of the trademarks that people hear. I love double tracking things with a slight pitch variation. That was a trick I learnt from Roy Wood.
Interesting.
Of the Move, and original founding member of ELO, Roy Wood. He taught me that you track something on, then you change the speed of the tape very slightly, and then track it on again. And you get this lovely natural chorusing effect.
That must have been so exciting back then when you were inventing all that stuff, because now you just use a plug-in.
I know, yeah. You had to work. You did have to work harder back then.
What kind of hours were you working back then?
I did a lot of work with the Hollies, for example. They absolutely stuck to the hours. 2:30 to 5:30, break till 7, work till 10, good night.
Interesting.
McCartney, there were no rules. I mean, he would sometimes show up 3 hours late, and sometimes we'd work all night and go home at like 11 in the morning next day. But I think the Beatles had sort of come to the realization that they could do what the F they want. You know?
Yeah, right, of course.
There were no restrictions, no rules.
Of course. Do you ever feel like you need to push through writer's block, or feeling stale with your ideas, like you want to keep it fresh? Like, how do you push through those times when nothing's coming, like you're just completely blank?
If that happens, and it can happen on a session with several people there, and you're trying to thrash out a feel for a song, and it doesn't seem to be going right, I'm the first to say, let's go home, guys. Let's just come back to this tomorrow.
Walk away.
Yeah. I learned that from another producer who was an influence on me, Mickey Most. I watched him do that more than once. He said, this isn't working, let's go home. And I've done that a few times.
Interesting. And so, what are you working on now?
Looking for songs, writing songs, collaborating, so on.
Yeah, that's interesting. You did mention that you're doing a new studio album. One of my questions when you said that to me last night when we were having dinner, I thought, wow, because you told me about that one idea you had with the Dvorak. And I thought, I wonder if he hears this record ahead of time, not the actual songs, but seeing the shape of what you want it to be before you approach it. And by that, knowing then when you hear the songs that maybe people submit or that you're writing yourself is a fit. Like how you envision a project like that, knowing you're going to do a studio album, kind of throwing your net out into the universe to see what comes back.
One of the reasons for choosing the Dvorak New World Symphony was because I grew up with it. It was always one of my father's favorites, as was The Sorcerer's Apprentice, which we did a rock version of on the last album, The Secret. The New World Symphony has so many great tunes in it. I hope you'll listen to it again.
No, I was going to listen to it and see if there was some kind of motif I could grab and maybe, submit you an idea.
All right, well, why don't you do that?
Yeah, absolutely will.
But there's countless great things. There's one quite famous one which got used in a bread commercial in the UK. One of the themes from the album, and that will most likely become a song on the record.
And you work mostly at home in your home studio. You have a nice setup with a, what'd you say, 48-channel Neve?
32.
32-channel Neve.
That's enough.
All the bells and whistles.
Mixing has become a much easier process for me because you can make all level changes in the box before it goes back in finally to be the digital master. So it's a very analog feel to the way I work these days.
Yeah, that's nice. Do you think you'll cut the whole thing at your place, or do you?
Pretty much. I mean, if we do orchestra, we'll have to go to Capitol, or
Would that be your choice to go to Capitol Records to do?
absolutely. Yeah, I love it there.
Great orchestrator Tom Brooks. I mean, he's really a great musician.
And he has a student orchestra, and he also has access to a great session orchestra, which we used on the Secret. Worked great.
So when you're on your deathbed, what do you?
Not planning that too soon.
Yeah, I hope not either. But I always think when you're on your deathbed, what do you want to feel when you look back? You know, how do you want to see yourself when you look back? What would be the ideas that would be going through your head? I did this. I feel good about this. This is what I'm proud of. What are the important things to you when you look back at your life?
Of course, I'd like to be remembered for some good music. I think I've been incredibly lucky. I only went through one very brief period of being broke. Right when I was playing in that blues band, which I mentioned earlier, I was pretty broke then. I've been very fortunate and never had to really have too much worry about finances. But on my deathbed, yeah, I hope that I delivered something that people felt good about, that people enjoyed.
You definitely did. Just playing in your band, I see the faces of thousands of people that just feel so uplifted by your music. That's one thing that struck me the most about working with you, is that it makes people feel good. You know, your concerts are really inspiring and uplifting.
And the interesting thing is I've always remained reasonably anonymous. I don't get recognized. Perhaps a little less so now that I've been doing more shows. Occasionally we'll get recognized, but I went through a very long period of people just literally not knowing what I looked like. By the same token, people would hear songs. They say, "Oh, that's a good song. Oh, is that the Alan Parsons project? Oh, I didn't know that." Particularly Sirius, which is, you know, the intro to Eye in the Sky, which became this huge anthem for sports events.
Huge.
And so many people, even to this day, they hear that intro to the Chicago Bulls or the New Orleans Saints or whatever, and they still don't actually know who the artist is. They just say, "Oh, it's the Bulls theme," or "It's the Saints theme."
Yeah, you'll go out and you'll go all over the world, and people will come to your concerts, and that's a testament to the greatness of your legacy.
I hope so. Yeah, I'm always hopeful that we can step back a little bit, a generation, get the sons and daughters of the fans that follow me through.
Well, that's another good byproduct of the internet, because the younger people are discovering this music. Mm-hmm. Last time I played Japan, it was like 25 and under.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
And I'm sure that's happening with you too. I've had a lot of people, when they find out that I've played with you, they're freaking out, you know, and they're young.
Our demographic is still, 40 to 70 probably, more likely to be 50 to 70. If they will bring their sons and daughters, then I'll be happy about that.
Yeah, I think they will. So thank you very much for hanging with us. I appreciate
That's
you
right.
very much. It's always a pleasure to hang with you. You're an amazing artist, engineer, producer, and all that, but mostly you're a great dude, and I really like hanging out with you. And so when Alan comes to town, go see him and check out all of his new stuff. You won't be disappointed.
Go see Kip too.
Thank you.